everybody, I'm Beebs Kelly. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to take a look at Harry's interview with The Guardian that came right on the heels of his meeting with King Charles, the first time in nearly 2 years that he had seen his father, and it was a mess. The whole UK trip was weird, and the way it was covered in the press was also weird. I think that Meghan and Harry's PR team, and Harry's in particular, his UK branch of his PR team, is trying really, really hard to step him away from the petulant, cranky, angry image that he has cultivated for himself and place him back into the similar light that he was seen before Megxit, or at least before Meghan. And I don't think it's really going to work, but for whatever reason, all that effort and all that hard work with the PR during the UK trip, that actually did get him some decent press, some good articles that were trying to be positive about Harry's visit and the things that he was doing. You know, people were saying that he looks at ease and that he did the right thing when he donated money to a charity and showed up for the Well Child Awards or what have you. People were complimenting him in the press articles. And then he went and blew it all up with this Guardian article saying that his conscience is clear after everything that he has done and said about and to his family, which is wild. Super strange approach to kind of blow all of that up. It makes me think that Harry wanted to kind of speed along this process, and he got the good press, and now he wants to be like, no, I stand by what I did. I'm not sorry for anything. I think that I did the right thing, and you should still like me anyway. Or maybe he saw that he was getting good press and thought that he had the leeway to kind of then justify his actions in some way. Because I can't imagine any PR person in their right mind clearing this and being like, yeah, it's a great time and great choice to put this out in an interview right after you see King Charles for the first time in a long time, your sick father, to put this out immediately after that. Great timing. Nobody would advise him to do that. This was a crazy move. So let's take a look at the article together. I have not read the full article. I've been saving it for filming. So let's see what happens. So the aim of this visit is to promote the work of the Duke of Sussex's Invictus Games Foundation and to celebrate the recovery and rehabilitation of the thousands of veterans there who have suffered life-changing injuries since the war with Russia began 3 years ago. So they are in Ukraine. Yes, they are in somewhere near the border between Poland and Ukraine. Because of the sheer numbers of wounded, Invictus has become increasingly well known in Ukraine, and Harry, somewhat surprisingly, has achieved cult hero status. The Guardian accompanies him on the journey to the capital, something of a gamble for both sides, as Harry noted. He is suspicious of the media, and the Guardian has long been critical of the monarchy. And over the next 36 hours, we learn a lot, big and small, about this complex, conflicted man. He doesn't like posing for staged photographs. Someone tell Meghan. Harry doesn't like it. Why does she make him do it all the time? And he doesn't like cycling. He said he did. He said he likes bicycling around California. What is happening? He likes to box to relieve his frustration. I could see that. He says it helps him to decompress. In private, he is very informal, padding around in his socks on the train to and from Kiev and making dad jokes. In public, he has a confident voice and an easy charm with strangers, but on his own, he is softly spoken and asks questions about people and about politics. He has views. He is not, he says, the unhappy man some of the press like to portray him as. But yes, he wants to spend more time in the UK. Does he regret putting his side of the story in the very public way that he has? No, he doesn't. My conscience is clear. This is wild. Hearing the way this is described right here, if this article was written in like a play-by-play sort of a fashion where they were just chatting and then kind of immediately out of nowhere sort of asked whether he regrets putting his side of the story out in the public the way that he did, Maybe Harry just said my conscience is clear and whatnot because he was talking one-on-one with this person and didn't really want to make it into some big deal. But I believe him. I feel like Harry doesn't get just how screwed up it is to do what he did. You have to be really lacking in empathy and social awareness to think that it makes any sense whatsoever to put stories in a book or on TV about your family members who are also public figures that is not 100% true unless it's like positive. If you're just saying nice positive things and you're recounting some fun and happy stories from your childhood, the details don't need to be perfect. You can change some of the details to maintain privacy here and there. And it's not a big deal. If you're saying nice things and positive things, it's whatever. But if you're criticizing and you're saying stuff that's negative or you're making up stories, you're taking things out of context, you're twisting things, even if you were to take Harry's word for it and say, okay, all these stories of Harry's are true, even though we know there's so many things that don't add up in Harry's versions of events. Even in Spare, there's a lot of contradictions with things that he's said at other points, or even within the book itself, there's contradictions. But even if we were to take his word for it and believe all of the things that he has said, he still put his side of family conflicts out into the public, where his family is also public figures and they have not done the same and they did not have the chance to do the same. So that alone is not a fair or kind thing to do. That's just morally very questionable choice. And I think that that's something that rubs people the wrong way. That Harry thought that he had the right to say things about fellow public figures without them having the opportunity to set the record straight. Like that he thought he could just take that liberty, I think rubs people the wrong way, and rightly so. He talks a little about his mother Diana and his father too. If Invictus is his professional priority, it seems clear his father is a personal one. But all that comes out on the way back to the UK. What is happening in Ukraine is his immediate concern, and for good reason. So then they talk a little bit about how because Ukraine has had a lot of people injured, that they are interested in connecting with Invictus and working with Invictus to help those who have been injured during that conflict. And it says here that Invictus has been devising programs to help veterans all over the country get access to sports facilities. At a reception on Friday morning, the IGF team are guests at the National Museum of the History of Ukraine in the Second World War, where they meet ministers and dozens of recovering wounded. Where the Deputy Minister for Veterans Affairs tells The Guardian that sports recovery and rehabilitation did not exist in Ukraine before Invictus. Now we are creating a whole system with different kinds of training and preparing teams in all kinds of sports. And it's here that Harry's popularity among Ukrainians becomes very clear. The injured want to talk to him. The mothers and fathers of the wounded and dead want to shake his hand or hug him. He is cheered and clapped at every turn, as are his colleagues. It's well known that Invictus was a great fit for Harry before Megxit and all of that happened. Invictus felt like a really, really good fit for Harry. It was the perfect thing for him to kind of take on and create and build his legacy around. And that's why the Royal Foundation, along with Princess Catherine and Prince William and some of King Charles's funding as well, got together to make Invictus happen and set it up and make it a thing and invested a lot of money into it. It's a real shame that it has been tarnished in the way that it has, because clearly there is still need for it. And in certain places of the world, like in Ukraine, it has a real meaningful place and purpose. So then when Harry is on his own promoting and working for or with Invictus in a place like Ukraine, or just doing Invictus events on his own, it not only makes sense and Harry seems to do a better job of it, he's more relaxed, he's more in the zone, but it also demonstrates the potential that has been squandered in a lot of ways through Meghan's incessant involvement in Invictus. Because, for example, on the Canada Invictus Games that recently happened, there was a lot of criticism around the way Meghan behaved, her speech, why is she even making a speech, things like that. And the pulling of Harry away from this alleged passion project of his. And it only draws attention to the negative things that Harry has done and the negative reputation that he has when Meghan is also around and involved. And there's been a lot of talk about people wanting Harry to be ousted from the Invictus Games, which I just don't think is very likely. Although it would make sense and in a lot of ways should happen. It should be the natural next step, because you wouldn't want somebody heading and being the face of an initiative or an organization like Invictus if their character is in question and they've made a lot of weird, terrible moral choices that make people feel like he's not that great of a guy. So where this becomes a problem really comes down to, in order for Invictus to help expand access to training facilities for the people in Ukraine who need Invictus, and it's a great therapy for them, it's a wonderful thing for them, they should have access to it. In order for Invictus to be able to help that happen and achieve that goal of expanding access in Ukraine, it costs money. It just does. So Invictus is going to need to raise that money somehow. The general public, though, is off-put by Harry. They're off-put by Harry and Meghan's involvement in Invictus. They're off-put by Harry's questionable character and his choices and what he seems to stand for. Because the very fact that he doubled down on "my conscience is clear" in this article even just shows us that he's unwilling to demonstrate any degree of discretion or just retrospective on himself and think about himself, think inward, have a little bit of critical thinking, a little bit of self-analysis on what you could have done better or differently. All it would have taken was for him to say that, he is not confident he would choose to do it the same way again, or he understands that maybe there was better ways to go about things, but at the time it felt like the right choice. Or even just to say he'd rather not talk about that. He'd like to keep the subject to the Invictus Games. Actors do that all the time. When they're asked a personal question or weird question, they divert it back to the project that they're working on, the movie that they're there to promote, and just say, well, I'd rather just talk about this, or I'd rather we stay on subject here. That's totally fine and appropriate, and would be better than saying, my conscience is clear, I have no problem with what I did, when there's clear problems with what he did. And so because Harry is so the face of Invictus, it makes people, the general public, less eager or less willing to donate to Invictus, to get involved with Invictus and help out, or even just to volunteer. People are not that jazzed about Invictus because of Harry, and that's where it becomes a problem. So although I don't think that they're going to get rid of Harry anytime soon, there could be a chance at improving the dynamic if he keeps Meghan totally separate from it. That could help things at least a little bit. But at this time, there's no indication that Harry plans on really pushing Meghan to the side at all. He seems to have no problem bringing her about and having her involved in everything. Probably because it's not worth the headache of a big argument behind the scenes. When asked about his visit to the UK and the press, Harry says, "It is only in certain elements of the press where you see this talk about me being down or saying I am not smiling. This comes from people who think they know what I am thinking and how I am feeling. They are wrong. I think parts of the British press want to believe that I am miserable, but I'm not. I'm very happy with who I am, and I like the life that I live. I have certainly had to deal with some very stressful events over the last 4 years. There's been the uncertainty and stress of the litigation and finding out certain things that have really, really hurt. But he believes there's a disconnect between what is written about him by some commentators and what most other people think. I feel a lot of support from the British public. Even now, I feel like I have been destroyed by certain members of the British press. It serves them to think that the British public feel the same way about me as they do. But I don't feel that, and I don't see that. For as long as I have known, certain elements of the British press have tried to speak on behalf of the nation. I think they are out of touch with the nation on a lot of things. They hope to bring the public with them, but I think the British public can speak for and think for themselves." what he's saying has merit, but at the same time, when you look at Harry's behavior, it can't possibly be a happy and content human being who goes around rehashing old problems that are small problems, like he did in Spare and on the Netflix special and in Oprah. Little tiny problems, making mountains out of molehills, making these little problems huge issues and rehashing them countless times over and over and over, and constantly going to court and constantly trying to force things to be your way when pretty much everybody around you is being like, no, that's not how this works, Harry. If you quit the job, you quit the perks too. You lose the perks when you quit the job. And for him to do Spare and Netflix and Oprah and all these other interviews that he has done, because he's done a lot of interviews as well, like the Tom Bradby one more recently that he did for Spare, for example. All of these, he has gripes and he has complaints and he's marinating on his complaints every time he has one of these interviews. That is not a sign of a happy, content man. It's a sign of somebody who has frustrations and anger and has been disappointed in a way where he can't get past it and he can't reason with it or reframe it or accept it and is unhappy. That's, I think, the main reason why a lot of press and a lot of public think that Harry is unhappy, because of his constant complaining and his constant woe is me, this is terrible, this has been so hard sort of a vibe. Every chance he gets, pointing that out does not align with somebody who is actually happy and content and moving onward. Because when you really are content with your life and you're happy, past disappointments are not something that you focus on or want to spend time thinking about or talking about. Like, it's the same as like if you live in a crappy old house and you move into a nice new house, you're not going to sit around thinking about and spending time talking about how bad it was in the old house. You might say it in passing like a joke, like, oh, haha, good thing we don't have to deal with that anymore. Yay. But it's in this like really positive tone. You're not kind of still marinating on and feeling those same negative feelings about, you know, the things being broken all the time inside your old house, constantly needing repairs or something like that, or it being so drafty it's always cold. You're not still thinking about that. You're not still marinating on that. But Harry is still always marinating on his past problems and things that he doesn't like that happened in the past. And that, I think, is why people actually think Harry is unhappy. Harry mentions his wife, Meghan, only once by name, a reference to something she told him about how telling the truth is the most efficient way to live. She said, just stick to the truth. It is the thing I always fall back on, always. And if you think like that, who would be stupid enough to lie? It takes up too much time and effort. This seems like a soundbite Meghan heard from a commentator who said, you know, the feedback for Harry and Meghan has been that they cannot keep their stories straight. And because they're lying all the time, they're constantly contradicting themselves. And it does take up a lot of time and effort to lie. But that is what Harry and Meghan have been doing. How rich coming from them, of all people. This is wild. It feels very much like a deep, deep effort at gaslighting, to try to take on this image of Harry and Meghan being truth tellers is not only the most absurd thing on earth, but it feels like this desperate, subliminal attempt at aligning their brand as such to combat all the damage that they have done for the last few years. Maybe this new PR team that they hired, this outsourced PR team, is getting into this trickery of trying to send out more subliminal, sneaky ways to change the way people view the Sussexes by changing what sorts of things pop up in search results. For example, when you search for Meghan and Harry tied to, for example, telling the truth or lying, maybe this quote will come up. and it might trick a handful of people. It feels like that's what they're going for and what their technique and approach has shifted towards, because Meghan did the same sort of a thing in the Bloomberg interviews, some very subliminal, sort of gaslighty sort of messaging that anybody who has followed the story would be like, that's crazy for you of all people to say. This is the same sort of a thing. So that's pretty intense. It's getting dicey. It's going deep. Their attempts at changing the narrative. It's getting very tricky. This brings him to the very public things he has said about his life, the interviews, TV series, and book he wrote, Spare. I know that speaking out annoys some people and it goes against the narrative. The book, it was a series of corrections to stories already out there. One point of view had been put out and it needed to be corrected. False. Because Harry was not correcting stories that were just in the media and journalist stories. That is not what Spare was. Spare had all sorts of stories that just came straight out of Harry's mouth and had never been reported in the public eye in any sort of a press article or story in the media at all. Like the fight that he had with William, for example, or the spat over the bridesmaids' dresses. Harry's account of these events have never really been hashed out in the media from the actual other side. Harry doesn't seem to put two and two together here, that when he makes statements that involve his family, it positions him as attacking them and robbing them of the opportunity to have their privacy as well as their side of the story heard. He's not fighting the media when he does that. He's fighting his family, and he's putting his family into a weird space and in the firing line in a way. Most people rally around the royal family in these scenarios and don't really believe Meghan and Harry, but even still, there's a chance that some people would believe Meghan and Harry. And so whenever Harry does this and he thinks he's correcting a narrative that's already out there, correcting a story from the press, he thinks he's fighting the press or targeting the press. But he's not. He's targeting his family is how it comes across. In large part because a lot of these things were never in the press. He adds, I don't believe that I aired my dirty laundry in public. It was a difficult message, but I did it in the best way possible. My conscience is clear. It was exactly airing your dirty laundry in public. There's no other way to put it. There isn't. It's not stubbornness. It is having principles. Harry must misunderstand the word. He does not ever expect to get positive coverage from some quarters. A ceasefire is perhaps the best he can hope for. It's not about revenge, it is about accountability. Nor does he want to prolong any divisions with his family. But in life, he says you cannot have reconciliation before you have truth. Oh my goodness gracious. The way this comes across, to me at least, in this moment, is a very, very petulant, spoiled man who does not understand the collateral damage that he is causing to his family and the disconnect, the cognitive dissonance that he has from recognizing that his actions have directly impacted negatively his relationship with his family versus what he thinks he is doing is so profound. And I feel it must be, at least in part, fueled by Meghan, especially this line, you cannot have reconciliation before you have truth. This must be what she's saying behind closed doors to him. I could just see it play out, of like, well, you need to get them to say the truth before you reconcile, and truth needs to happen before you reconcile, and living in truth is the most efficient way to live, blah, 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 blah. This must be the new thing that she's trying to hammer away at in order to try to make it harder for Harry to reconnect with his family or just say sorry. But at the same time, Harry doesn't seem like he gets it, like he would say sorry for what he's done. But no matter what, it was a terrible PR choice on the heels of a PR blitz in the UK and then this trip to Ukraine that could have been framed positively and focused exclusively on Invictus and gotten him not only some good press, but shown that Harry can come and do some work and keep it professional and not bring up his personal life at all. He lost that opportunity. He dropped the ball and he ended up making it about his personal life and his gripes and complaining again, as well as gaslighting and just being insane to say these types of things after all he's done, showing that he really doesn't get it. And on top of it, this ended up overshadowing the whole UK trip and the whole Ukraine stunt. The whole thing has been overshadowed by this article in The Guardian, this interview. Nothing else really matters now in the press cycle. And so he sabotaged his own efforts on top of it all. What could have been showing that he can still be of value and do a good job and stay professional, he squandered that opportunity and said, no, I'm still the same old Harry. I'm still going to complain. I'm still going to divulge information right after I meet with my father. I'm still going to double down on the things that I've been saying and doing and take no accountability. You can't have reconciliation before you take accountability. No matter who you are, if you've had a dispute with family especially, and you really love your family, then you will take accountability whether you want to or not. Because no matter what, there is always, probably almost always, something you could have at least done a little bit better or a little bit differently in any dispute. And so I would say he needs to reframe what he says here to, you can't have reconciliation before you take accountability, and I take accountability for my mistakes or the things that I've done that have hurt my family. That's all he needs to say, but he won't do it. But what do you think? Do you guys think that Harry is being manipulated here? Do you think this is him? Do you think that this is like fueled by a new wave of how to reframe it from Meghan? Or do you think this is really truly Harry not putting two and two together, or is he being malicious here? Because this blows my mind that he has the audacity to say such things. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye!